In this presentation from Clean Virginia Waterways 2023 Stormwater and Plastic Pollution Workshop, Jen Cole gives an overview of the value of public and private partnerships. Jen is the former president of the Virginia Council on Litter Prevention and Recycling and former vice president of awards for the Community Appearance Alliance. She currently serves on Virginia's Plastic Waste Prevention Advisory Council and Fairfax's Litter Task Force. Jen is also an active member in Fairfax's MS4 outreach and education teams, the Virginia Conservation Network, and the Virginia Coastal Alliance. Jen has a master's in public administration with an emphasis on urban environmental policy from Norwich University and a certification in advanced sustainable business practices from the University of Vermont.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Jen, and Ellie's right there. I'm going to go through a couple different things that we're working on here in Fairfax. And when Zach asked me to put together a presentation, we've worked together for a long time. So I was like, well, which one do you want? And we decided that we were going to talk about the value of public and private partnerships, because without the public-private partnership that Clean Fairfax enjoys with Fairfax County, we wouldn't have been able to get some of the things accomplished that we have. And I'm going to talk about the wins that we've had, the sort of generic whatevers, and then some of the things that I would consider not wins, so that other people can do better than we have. Okay, so a brief history of Clean Fairfax. We actually started in 1979 as a group of complaining residents, if you can imagine that, in Fairfax County. People who were mad about litter in Fairfax County went to their board of supervisors and complained about it. And so it was absolutely squeaky wheel gets the grease. They made a litter task force. And in 1985, we actually became our own nonprofit, but we're embedded within the Department of Public Works and Environmental Services as I like to say we're like a barnacle. So we enjoy some of the benefits of being within the county, but all of the hassle of being in the county. These are some of the things that we have worked on over the course of the last couple of years. We have traditionally put together the Earth and Arbor Day event for Fairfax County. We don't do that anymore. We let parks do that now. They have a much bigger staff. Clean Fairfax is just Jen and Ellie for the entire county. So doing that for all of Fairfax County is kind of a big thing. We're funded by the litter tax, which Zach just talked to you about, because it is parted out by population and vehicle miles traveled. Fairfax County gets the largest portion. So Clean Fairfax applies for that money for the county gets the money, and the county then transfers the money to Clean Fairfax. We have an MOU to provide litter prevention education, recycling education for the county. That's the public-private partnership. We also have this really awesome stormwater partnership, and this is part of the partnership that is the big success story. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Emily Wave, we work with Emily. We also have started Litter Free Virginia, which is our clearinghouse of legislative information to help people all across the Commonwealth with when there's legislation that we want people to be aware of. And we led the litter task force for the county. So we get a lot done when there's just two of us. For a while, it was just me and Zach. And now Zach has moved on to bigger things. So here's how I feel as a person who has worked almost her entire career in nonprofit, locality and municipality adjacent. Before here, I worked in Providence. Doing the street tree plantings for the city of Providence. So I know what it's like to work in a nonprofit and deal with municipalities. I've been doing it for almost 25 years. So you can have a couple of different relationships with your municipality. You can have a partnership. You can work all towards the same thing. You can have people that serve on committees like I do. and work together all towards the same goal. You can have an adversarial relationship, and I have certainly seen lots of adversarial relationships between ad hoc groups and nonprofits and NGOs with their localities and their agencies, where you're working towards the same thing, but you're taking completely different routes to it, and it's a mess. Or you can have no relationship at all. And for those of you who are from localities, I want you to think about, like, what kind of relationship do I have with the nonprofits and the NGOs and the ad hoc groups and the friends of groups in my area? And can that relationship be better? Could it be worse? It can always be worse. Trust me, it can always be worse. And you know, what kind of relationship does your agency have with the county? And if you're coming to this presentation from a nonprofit, what kind of relationship do you have with the agency? Are you constantly badgering them? Are you a partner in their work? Like, let's reassess our relationships, because honestly, I think we could all do better. And we're all working towards the same thing, which is, in our part, we're working towards clean water and clean air. Okay, so here's the problem that Clean Fairfax sees, and this is going to be the start of some of our partnership work. In Fairfax County, and I'm going to tell you that all the pictures that you see, with the exception of that one of the turtle eating the plastic bag, which I just photoshopped, these are all pictures that we took in Fairfax County. So, and they were either taken by me or they were taken by Zach. So there's overuse of single-use plastics. The trash escapes containers and becomes litter. Now, this is key, because for the past almost 40 years, I think that we've been battling this idea that people are just litter bugs and that they just throw stuff out their car windows or they don't use trash cans. And the data that we have collected over the last 7 years doesn't suggest that at all. Data suggests that trash escapes containers, when we have big wind events like we've had the last 2 days, we have inadequate infrastructure for trash and recycling, storage and containment and pickup. We have inadequate enforcement for, especially for commercial sites. And when we have all of that, we end up with a lot of trash in our stream. That's a stream. And it's probably what? Probably 2 feet of plastic before you even hit water. Okay. So here, I'm just going to show you a couple pictures. This is trash day in Fairfax County. You can see that in the way we have it in Fairfax County, it is considered a container if it's in a plastic bag. Now, I think that that's problematic. We don't consider a plastic bag a container because, as you can see, it can get ripped open, and you can see how close it is to storm drains. You see, these are some overflowing dumpsters. What we ended up doing is that we were using this relationship that we had with stormwater. I'm going to backtrack a little bit. So stormwater needed a new MS4 permit. And I'm going to assume everyone knows what an MS4 permit is in this room, because we're at a stormwater conference. And one of the things that we had talked about, I was on the trash team at the time, which meant that we would get together once a month and talk about where there was trash and who was going to go pick it up. And the thought was that we needed to monitor some areas of the county for floatables, which, as you know, are things that float in the water, like you just saw in that stream. And as the one person in the room who was not a county employee, I said, well, what if all of the different agencies decide that we will all pick a location and we monitor it and report back to stormwater? Nobody liked that. And I said, well, what if Clean Fairfax did a couple of these monitors and reported back? And of course, it ended up that Clean Fairfax now does compliance monitoring for for the MS4 permit, and we have since 2017. And it's a great relationship, and we talk about it everywhere we go. And one of the great things that has happened is that not only does Stormwater get their compliance monitoring done, and they're in compliance with their permit, but we get this data that then we can use, which, spoiler alert, is where that data came from about bags. And we can use that data to push for policy changes. Because as you heard me say that I think policy changes, I think law changes, I think rule changes, along with behavioral changes is how we get less plastic into the streams, and therefore we're pulling less plastic out of the streams. Okay, so we had all of this data, and the Board of Supervisors said, you know, we need a litter task force because 40 years later, people are complaining about litter still, not again, still. And so we were asked to manage the litter task force for the county. And Zach and I put together with our partner in Public Works, Charlie Forbes, a group of stakeholders across the county. And we got to work. And we put together, with the data that we had, some thoughts. Here's the data that we had. This is what the kind of stuff that we find in our monitoring. And we monitor 5 different land uses: medium density residential, high density residential, low density residential, commercial, and industrial. And we use something that's very much like the Clean Swell app. We just use a single piece of paper and we make tick marks on what we're finding. And this is what we find. And so we are able to use this data when we go back to legislators and say, look, for the past 5+ years, this is what we've been finding, and it's terrible. And therefore, we really need a bag bill, or we need a bottle bill, or we need a whatever. Okay, so here was our scope of work. I'm just going to go through this really quick. We got our existing data together, which was really easy because we already had it. And then we started in very lightly in October of 2020, and we were done by June of 2021. And then it took a little while to get it through the system, and we presented it to the Board of County Supervisors at the very end of 2021. So here are our recommendations. They were nothing outlandish. They were nothing that would make anybody gasp or clutch at their pearls. And yet there was some of that, as you can imagine. These were the short-term recommendations. These were our medium-term recommendations. So we had what we called low-hanging fruit, medium-hanging fruit on the tree. And then we had some long-term ideas to consider, you know, as things were changing within the county, when it came to change code, when it came to certain things. We wanted to go ahead and have them look at some of these ideas. The only thing that we were actually able to get accomplished, a lot of our was absorbed by a zero waste task force, which we were not a part of, oddly enough, was we were able to get the 5-cent bag tax implemented. And we have already found in the first couple quarters of the bag tax being implemented, fewer bags. Now, this is not robust data because we don't even have a full year of data yet. But this is enough so that we have been able to send this out to other localities that are interested in adopting their own bag ordinance to show that we are finding the one entity that's literally counting plastic bags out in streams, we are finding fewer of them. So this is an example of how that public-private partnership works really well. Because we have the data, we present the data, we gently push for policy changes when we get it. Now, if the county hadn't been amenable to the change, we would have had to be sort of more aggressive. Maybe our relationship wouldn't have been as nice. It wouldn't have been as good. But because we have this great relationship with stormwater and we have access to all of this data that we're collecting anyway, we're able to say, look, we're doing this work at the county. This is your data that we're collecting. So let's try to make things better. And, you know, we're really proud of that work. When I came to the county in 2009, I said, I am going to get rid of plastic bags in Fairfax County or I'm going to die trying. And in the very end of 2020, I got cancer. And so I was pretty sure I was going to die trying. But then we got the bag bill passed. So I think I'm good. So another partnership is our litterfreevirginia.org website. We call this our side hustle. And this is a partnership of not just localities, but also other nonprofits, other organizations that might want to help with advocacy, but they don't know how. One of the things that I have found in my long career working in nonprofit is that many folks that work in nonprofit think that they cannot advocate because they think that's the same thing as lobbying, and it's not. And one of the things that I have found in my long career of working municipal adjacent is that county employees cannot advocate because they think that they're not somehow allowed to do that. But the truth is that for both of our industries, whether it's nonprofit or working in a locality or a municipality or government service, our entire job is to advocate. However we do that, right? It's to advocate for clean water. It's to advocate for the residents. It's to advocate for clean air. It's to advocate for children. Whatever our job is, our job exists to make the world a better place for whatever our mission is, right? So our mission is to work on environmental issues. So to talk about those things, we're allowed to call up legislators and call up people from stormwater or wastewater or, you know, the Office of Environment and Energy Coordination and go, hey, you know, why aren't you doing this? Like, this is a really good idea. And as folks who work in municipalities, you can absolutely call up Clean Fairfax and say, hey, you know, we would love it if you could help us with this project. We would love it if you could stand down while we try to sort this out. And when we get calls like that, when we get calls for help in any direction, anyone who knows me knows that I will like drop whatever I am doing and I will rush to your side to try to help whatever the problem is. But if you ignore the work that your nonprofit is doing, just like if you're a nonprofit and you're ignoring the struggles that your locality is having, nothing to that. And so I would say that, you know, like as you're continuing to assess your relationship with the people that you work with who are not in your silo, to really try to figure out, like, how can we communicate better? How can we work together? There's a department in Fairfax County that shall remain be unnamed, who is notorious for never working with any of the other environmental groups, despite them being like in their job to do that. And like any environmental nonprofit or ad hoc group, for the most part, in the county, and mention them, and they will make a sour face because they don't work with anyone. And so when they get into a position where they need support, they're not going to get it. But you know what? If Emily calls and says, I have a XYZ, can you do an ABC? I'm like, when do you need it by? because we had that kind of relationship. So we help each other out. So here are some policy wins. And these policy wins specifically lessen the burden on our stormwater friends. So we were able to raise, this was actually Zach, raise the Virginia litter tax, which meant that Clean Fairfax got a little bit more money. So we were able to put more resources towards the work that we do. We were able to pass statewide the enabling legislation for the plastic bag 5-cent fee, which by the way, isn't enough cents is the fee, but whatever. We couldn't get a whole bag ban and we couldn't get cents. 5 cents is enough. And localities, not sure where Prince William is on this, but hopefully we'll see Prince William. That's the only one left in Northern Virginia. We were able to get rid of intentional balloon releases. That was a tough one. People loved electric. And there's nobody in this room that loves balloons more than I do. But the idea that you would just let balloons go and not realize that they were litter, that was definitely a hard thing to get people to understand. Farmers understand it though. They absolutely understand how bad balloons are and plastic bags in the southern part of the state because animals eat them. The foam and EPS thing is still outstanding. But I think that the work that Katie and Zach are doing to find out just how much foam is out there, that is the kind of data that we bring back to our localities and our friends in Stormwater to press for these legislative changes. No amount saying, please, Chick-fil-A, even though you don't use your foam in Maryland because it's illegal there, because it's banned there, please stop using it in Virginia, is going to get Chick-fil-A to stop using foam in Virginia until there's a law. And no amount me saying, please don't eat at Chick-fil-A because they use foam is going to get people to do that. So that's why we need legislative changes. Legislative changes come when boards of supervisors make it a priority in their county. And they make it a priority in their county when they see what? The data that shows that overwhelmingly it's foam that they're finding in their streams. And ongoing single-use bans and deposits. So all of that data that we get with our relationship with stormwater, all of that helps us with these changes. So, I don't even remember this slide. Oh, sorry. So, only public-private partnership that Fairfax County enjoys. So there's a couple others in here, and you might not even think of them being public-private partnership, but if you're a parent and you are at all involved in your kid's school or their PTA, that's a public-private partnership right there between the school and the parents groups. All of the friends of groups for creeks, libraries, parks, watersheds, those are all public-private partnerships. Tree Leaf is a public-private partnership that helps plant trees back in Fairfax County. Northern Virginia Soil and Water Conservation District is sort of a quasi-public-private partnership because they're kind of a public agency. And, you know, almost all of the organizations in your community are public-private partnerships. And so, you know, they can either be friends or foes. And you really want them to be friends because, man, it can just be such gigantic pains in the rear end when they're trying to get something that they want. But the important thing is to remember that we're all after the same thing, and that is clean water, clean air, clean communities, healthy kids, whatever it is, we're all after the same thing. We just may have different ways of getting there, and we just have to figure out how to work together. So if this was too long and you zoned out, this is the important slide. And this slide is important because this is a trash can from a park in Fairfax County. Now, this trash can was at one of our compliance monitoring sites. And every time we went, it was overflowing. And it's behind a bunch of commercial properties. And the property managers, we talked to them and we said, would you adopt this park? It's like a skinny little park with a walking path. And they're like, yes, we will come out and empty this trash can every single day. I'm like, that's so awesome. Thank you so much. Because we knew that the trash that we were monitoring in that stream was coming from this overflowing trash. And so I called the Parks Department and they came and took that trash can away. It's an example of a relationship that clearly went south because we had this property management company all set to keep those trash cans pristine, because it would have meant that they had a much nicer spot for their employees to have lunch. And for whatever reason, Parks didn't want to have anything to do with it. And instead, they just took all the trash cans out of the Parks Department. Out of that park. And I never found out why. So, nonprofit and community groups can advocate for things you need in a way that you cannot as government employees, or they can get in your way. And I will end this on one other note, and that is that one of the great things about Clean Fairfax and our relationship with Fairfax County is that we can be more agile. We can post things on social media in 5 minutes. I can get on my computer from here and post something. And if you're a county employee or a town employee, I bet you can't do that. And so when information needs to go out about something, we can be a little bit faster. We don't have to go through so many layers. And so, use those people to get your word out.